live.
All right, back with episode 19 of World's Strongest Opinions, and joining us again. Well, actually, last time I think we joined Joe, but it's Yony Bear and Joe Jenga from Gym Life. And Yony, your podcast is just Yony, right?
No, it's Strong Personalities.
Oh, Strong Personalities. Why did I think that was just Yony? My bad.
Because
So,
I haven't created a page specifically for the podcast like y'all have. So y'all are ahead of me on that one.
gotcha. So maybe that's why. Yeah. So Strong Personalities, Gym Life, and World's Strongest Opinions back together for a reunion episode. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. You know, that was so much fun the first time we got together. We all had a very good chemistry, and we can always appreciate that. Certainly doing all these podcasts that we do. So to be able to do this again with some fellow podcasters, this was something I was really looking forward to. And it was a shame we couldn't do it sooner because, John, I know you were trying to push it up the calendar. And thanks to Darren, of course, we couldn't get together any sooner than this in his new job. But I can tell you this is something I didn't want to miss.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're glad you're back.
Heck yeah. Yony, how you doing, man?
I am doing really good. I'm excited to start. This is like my first podcast like in a month. So this is going to be my on-ramp on getting back on track with some of the interviews and events that I'm going to be filming here soon once the competitive season starts going again. Now that we're slowly getting out of the winter rut that everybody avoids those competitions.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about we'll probably do it sort of in order, I think, of the way the competitions are going. I know Ragnarok Games is going on right now. Still, I think, is it not, John?
It's day one finished up.
Day one just finished up. Okay.
Tomorrow.
Okay. We could do a little review. I'm going to lean on you, John, for that because I know you've been watching it. And our friend, the Greek Goliath, is competing today. Posted an amazing interview video.
I missed that. I kind of caught it. Yeah.
Oh man, if you haven't seen it, you gotta go check it out. It's dynamite.
Yeah.
I mean, he's throwing the WWF Rock personality down, man. And perfect, nailed it. But we're gonna talk a little bit about Ragnarok. We'll talk a little about the Arnold Strongman Classic that's coming up very, very quickly. Probably go through our picks and who we think is going to make the podium, and then Clash on the Coast is coming up after that. And I've heard the news, Yony, you're going to MC, which is huge.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited. 3 days at Hilton Head, so I'm excited. I'm ready for this.
Dude, Hilton Head is amazing. I'm bummed that I'm not going this year. I hit the first 2 years. I got to skip a year, but I hope to be back next year.
You're going to have to give me the food recommendations.
I'll tell you, Yony, I'm going out there, so I'll be out there with you. Well,
really? Let's go.
Yeah. I talked to Tyler last week. I'm going to go out there, yeah.
Make sure you guys rent a car if you don't drive out, because the Uber situation there is non-existent.
Yeah, I'm driving. Are you flying, Yony, or are you driving?
Flying.
Okay. Well, there you go. I got a car.
There you go.
There we go.
and then after Clash, we'll touch on World's Strongest Man on the roster and picks for that. So
yeah.
Let's kick it off with Ragnarok Games. John, give us a rundown.
So, I mean, it was interesting getting the live stream because, I mean, with a huge roster like that, I was assumed they were going to do like kind of a panoramic view, show all the lanes, kind of like OSG did and stuff. But instead, they chose an interesting approach of not having like any scores on the screen and stuff, and doing more kind of theatrical recordings of everyone. Of like the example we showed of like Nico's interview there. That's what the whole thing's like. Essentially, is just focusing on one athlete at a time, which is confusing when you have 4 lanes going to only like, I mean, they jump between athletes and stuff, but it's an interesting format because I think it'll definitely like, I mean, we've talked about, it'll be a great post-production thing if they put it all together in kind of like a nice little 1 or 2 hour video, kind of like the Shaw Classic did the first year. and stuff of just kind of having those highlights. But overall, it seemed pretty impressive. And for my friends who were there, it seemed to have been a fun show for them. So hopefully it seems to have gone off well. Like so far, I hadn't heard very many complaints. I don't know if you all had talked to anyone, but it seemed to be doing well. Nico got his wish of going head to head with Jacob Finnerty. So they've been kind of neck and neck. Right now, Nico's sitting in 4th place. Finnerty's sitting at 3rd place. So that was interesting. I was surprised to see that the women's pro category only had one person in it, Nadia Sowers. So that was a surprise to see there. And then
that's always a bummer when there's only one person. I mean, especially at that level, you'd like to believe that there would be a much larger group.
Do you think it's because a majority of the pro level women are getting ready for Arnold's?
I think so. I think they kind of like aid into each other. Like a lot of, at least here in Texas, they'll like have all their shows right near each other enough that if anyone takes competing seriously, they can't do.
Yeah, you know what? And
I
think too that, and I brought this up on that sort of top shows in 2023 or shows to look out for. I think there's a lot of uncertainty about Ragnarok a little bit, and that's not a knock on Ralph at all and what he's trying to do down there. Obviously, the proof's going to be in the pudding when this show's done with. But I think there was a little bit of reservation by a large part of the community to kind of wrap its arms around this event. It was a little bit different. A lot of the names that you were seeing kind of that were coming onto that competitors roster early. I made reference. I didn't recognize a lot of them at all, almost like they were coming from a lot of different corridors of the lifting community as opposed to what we're used to seeing, this big sort of, a pathway of athletes into like one particular event. I think that made a lent to sort of the I guess you could say kind of maybe not the roar about this event that maybe we all thought maybe it should have got if it was going to be as big as it is right now. How do you guys feel about that? Was that kind of the same way you took it, Darren?
Yeah. I'm guilty. I don't know the promoter. I didn't really recognize anything. And yeah, I got invited or asked to come several times and I kind of turned it down because I didn't know what there's no history really there. Unfortunately the promoter's not somebody that's well known in the sport, I don't think. They certainly didn't have the what do I want to say? He's not as well known as like a Furman, right? Anthony Furman, who came and started Clash and was able to drum up a lot of energy and a lot of excitement, especially amongst pro athletes. So yeah, I kind of shied away from it. I couldn't have competed anyway, various reasons. But yeah, I kind of got that impression too, that a lot of people shied away for similar reasons. Like you said, we weren't seeing any real big names popping up on the rosters early on. And yeah, that's tough. Like for a promoter who doesn't have a lot of experience or isn't well known to come out and try to put on a big show. First year, like you said, we'll find out when it's all said and done. Proof will be in the pudding. If it's a good quality show, everybody's happy. They follow through with all of their promises. I'm sure they'll be back next year and hopefully it'll create some excitement. If not, it'll go by the wayside like a lot of others before it. But hopefully it adds to the circuit, if you will, of big shows for especially American strongman to compete at. So,
well, he certainly didn't pull any punches. I felt he brought that Viking singer guy in, which I thought was real cool, and the convention center and being where he's at, and a lot of the judging that he brought in, he tried to reach out to a larger part of the community as well. So the effort's certainly there. Like I said on my show, I'm waiting for this to kind of come out in the end, but we can all appreciate another big show. If this happens to be that next show, I'd love to see it. So that's kind of where I'm at with it now.
Yeah, I think there was some skepticism. Hopefully the prize pots will actually pay out like they did, because if that's one thing that was impressive, like hopefully Nadia, for putting her reputation on the line, supporting the show and everything, she surely should be getting that $10,000 check that they said the first place would get for pro women, because that's also a big thing that I'm not a fan of is when promoters will promise this kind of thing, and then when there's not enough people, they're like, "Oh, we're not going to pay out cash because there weren't enough people to compete." And it's like you can't really do that. But the one thing I will touch on, and I think would exponentially improve most strongman live streams, is having kind of a multi-cam setup, but having them each linked to their own individual live stream. Like, it would be a bit of a complicated thing for some people, but I think almost doing something where what would be kind of even like this, of essentially having 4 people call in and having a camera for each lane rather than doing a wide thing or a group thing, something like that, or doing a dedicated StreamYard stream per a lane would be pretty great.
Well, I can answer that question. Why you haven't seen that yet is the technology doesn't meet that request yet. Yeah,
Oof.
and I talk to Don with ADL all the time, and if I'm not going to misquote you, Don, right now, or misrepresent you with what I'm trying to spill out here, because I'm not as technologically savvy, of course. But from what I understand, in working with like InPlayer and some of these platforms like ADL works with, you essentially, if you were to do that, you'd have to create a separate asset for every single lane out there. You're limited. So as a viewer, then you would have to commit to a specific lane and then keep purchasing or committing to other lanes after you've kind of gone through the 1 or 2 cameras per maybe that particular look that you're getting. And then of course you'd have to set it up then from a commentary standpoint, and also sort of a if you were working with cameramen, for instance, everybody would almost be a separate live stream at that event. So logistically, it's a nightmare. And that I think they kind of discovered that in a lot of different ways throughout the last couple of years. But from what I understand, that's the bigger hang up with something like this. The technology is not quite there. It is, but it's not convenient for the viewer is what I'm getting at.
Probably not accessible either for a small price. Because, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is, NFL manages to do it, but they also have $14 billion and something to play with, right? Yeah.
And they're using their own satellite. I'm sure they developed their own platforms. I mean, they built their programming to be specifically for what they want. And for any promoter, whether it's Ralph from Ragnarok Games or Colin Bryce for that matter, boy, the return on that isn't what we think it is. And I'll tell you, from a guy, and Yony, you could probably be one to speak about this more than I can, because you've been live streaming for quite some time now as well, that this is not, it doesn't pay off, guys. It just doesn't. It's a very difficult thing to turn a dime on. And, when you see those pay-per-view events, it's like a gamble. It's a big fingers crossed, because like you mentioned earlier, Darren, sadly, a lot of our strongman community doesn't support the strongman community. So you're just not getting a lot of that kickback that you would think from doing things like that and going out on a limb to kind of put yourself out there financially. Yony, any experience with that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I want to piggyback on what you were saying. So the reason I think we're not seeing that big reimbursement in the money that we put into the live streaming, I think it's because we still have a lot of the athletes that we're seeing coming into strongman. They're not sure yet if this is like a full-time commitment, because there's been a lot of competitions where I've commentated or emceed and people are doing it for the first time, and some of them are just honest with me. They're like, yeah, this is just a one-time thing, I just wanted to try it. Or maybe they're just giving themselves a little break from powerlifting or from Olympic weightlifting. Sometimes it's being used as a break. So I think that's why you potentially don't see. And I think also once we have to get the competitions to be smaller, smaller bites, like Clash and some of these other programs that are just doing like 1 or 2 weight classes at most. So that way you can sit down 2 to 3 hours, see everybody compete real quick. And then I think that's when you're going to really start seeing the big investment.
Yeah. I've been saying something similar for a long time too, Yony, is it's got to be consumable by the audience, right? If you want to build an audience, it's impossible to watch these 10 plus class shows that are all out on the field at the same time. I mean, yeah, they're really efficient from a promoter standpoint. If you want to do that many classes, but from a viewer standpoint, if you want to grow the audience, it's got to be consumable, or there's got to be better communication. Especially, John already talked about scoring, and it's odd to me that we're a sport that's been around 40 some years, and we still suck at communicating score to the audience, right?
That's true. Yes.
Most competitions, you're clueless, and I said this to John earlier that nothing turns me away more than not knowing what the fuck is going on, right?
Yeah.
I
A
think
strongman event
strongman.
it's certainly
Go
an
ahead,
enigma
Joe.
for sure. Does Iron Podium have? They don't provide live scoring yet, do they? That's not like the USAPL Ironcast, right? Or Powerlifting's Ironcast.
Iron Podium is actively updated, but it depends on the promoter needs to actively be putting things in.
Okay, so I can't bring that over to my link, is what I'm saying. Like I can't with Powercast.
I think technically it would be a little bit awkward, but what I've seen is if you can kind of just get a banner and just kind of scroll through it manually almost.
Yeah, right.
So there's an alternative.
Yeah.
There's an alternative out there called Strength Results, and they actually have a plugin already built in their website for streaming live scores in a live stream. I don't know how it works exactly. You'd have to talk to the guy behind it, and man, I can't say his name right now. Swedish guy, really great dude, doing really great things in Europe for strongman. But there's an alternative to Iron Podium that I think in a lot of ways really outperforms it, because it also collects all of the scoring data on athletes and creates sort of a living leaderboard, if you will, from world records to everything, and put some legitimate athletic stats out for fans to compare.
What was it? What was it called?
It's called Strength Results. Strength Results. So we used it at Feats of Strength a couple of years ago, December 21, when we did the under 105 Atlas Zone World Record, where Josh Isley and Adam Dirks tied for that world record, still stands. And SCL, when I was in SCL in 21, under 105 World Championship, they used it there too. It's a great system. Did we lose Joe?
We lost Joe.
Joe!
The dark consumed him.
I was like, where'd he go?
This is a risk of being in the dark, Yony.
Oh, well, I think he was in his car too.
Yeah,
so I'm at home, fortunately. And then the reason I like to be in the dark is because the last couple of times I've live streamed and my dogs are in the back, they always seem to do something random in the background, and then that's what people comment on.
That's awesome. So John's cats do that too.
Yeah, they like to sit on their little cat tree there.
Oh, no. So one of the things, Darren, that I was thinking about when you said that the smaller weight classes, smaller, like picking one or two weight classes for show, I think that would also help the competitions not eating away at each other's competitors.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because there's this bigger is better mentality out there right now that, and I've been a part of some of those bigger shows, and you're probably right. It would be nice to see some of these shows become a smaller cap opportunity just to try to produce a better, production overall. And I would like to see that kind of start happening again a little bit as well. But then if you listen to a couple of things I mentioned on my last show, that commitment's got to be there from these athletes. And that's another thing, not to snipe the show here, but another thing that I've been seeing a lot of and hearing from with a lot of these promoters right now is the commitment of athletes they're getting, and this last minute sort of pull out of many of them that are kind of preventing their thought process to kind of go in the direction of producing a smaller event with risk of not having then enough competitors per class to actually pull off something that's a national qualifier along those lines.
Yeah, it's tough. When we did Feats of Strength, we ended up with 4, including myself. I was shooting for 8, so we ended up with 50% of the people because, guys got hurt. Life happens, all kinds of things, right? I don't think anybody pulled out because they didn't want to. Right. Just life happens, and that's kind of the logistics of, we've talked about that before. Ideally having a world record event, we want to have the best people in the world there, but the logistics of getting everybody in the world to one place at the same time it's tough, man.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge because, Cam was saying he'd love to compete against CJ Pierce, but it's hard to overlap with certain athletes. So it's one of these things where you'd have a show that's the biggest, and it's not always everyone's there, which is why shout out to Luke Davies and Chaos Strength.
And I think there you just said it too, John. I think there's a perfect example of what I'd like to see a little bit more go on from a promoter standpoint, is a promoter not being able, even at the smaller level, the smaller amateur level, take on a show that's specific to just a couple weight classes. Don't feel like you have to accommodate all, 7, 8 weight classes that Strongman provides. And just say, hey, this show, maybe do 2 a year and have a couple, 2 or 3, 2, 4 maybe in any given event, as opposed to trying to take on, that big sort of swath of athletes to try to make your event accommodate, the whole
You could
strongman
even
community.
go for like a seasonal thing. Like one
Yeah.
season's for like the lightweights, the next season is for the middleweights, and then that way you have built-in time for people to recover and get healthy. Because right now, since there's so many competitions and they're all trying to do all the weight classes, I think that goes to what Darren was saying, that a lot of them are pulling out just because they're trying to squeeze in so many competitions back to back. So I don't know. It's just spitballing here.
It's an enigma. It really is. Yeah.
Darren's idea. I mean, Darren's been a big proponent of just having like 2 weight classes for men of like under 105 and then over 105, or just like an open class
at the pro level, or just all across.
Even at the pro level. So I'm a huge fan of kind of the traditional old school mindset. I'm literally a strongman boomer.
Yeah, it's your.
When I started, there was 2 weight classes. There was 2 weight classes. It was lightweight, which was under 105K, and it was open. And the whole point of under 105K was a stepping stone to the open. You were expected to move on, right? It was never expected to be a career weight class. And that all kind of started changing. I can't remember the exact year, but it was early, it was like 2010, 2012-ish. A lot of the lighter people that wanted to be competitive in strongman started speaking up, got enough support, and convinced Dion to start creating weight classes. And that's really where all those, under 90 or under 200, under, 180, whatever it is, in the men's and the women's lighter weight classes all kind of came from. Because traditionally, for the longest time, strongman was meant to be a big guy sport, big person sport, right? It was never meant to be, these under 200 guys, and nothing against them. Those guys were great athletes. And I kind of sometimes make the argument that if you're if you want to compete under 200 pounds, and I'm not saying this as a negative or a knock, go do CrossFit. It's seriously, those guys under 200. Oh my God. All those guys are under 200, and they're fitter. They're just as strong. They're faster, right? Go do something that you can be very competitive at. And I think strongman should really revert back to the monster trucks of racing, right? That's the way I look at strongman.
Oh no. God, you're in trouble now, man.
I was like,
fucking 90s and 80s guys.
I was like, hey. No, definitely, yeah, we've already. I was like,
I'm actually even kind of trashing on my weight class. Like, I don't think I would have ever stayed 105. It was a conscious choice, right? It was my decision. I take responsibility for it, but I stayed at 105 because there were some promises of opportunity and whatever way back when that never really came to fruition. And, now I'm in my 40s. There's no way I'm going to put that weight on now. But, I have to reflect back and think, I probably should have just went heavy and went all out. But
I tell you, for a guy, go ahead, Yony.
I'm totally against that, though, just going back to the heavyweights, because for the sport to grow, you have to be a little bit inclusive. We can find a home for everybody. It's just being organized about it to build up the sport that way. Because I don't want to just send any. It's like football, right? Like if you look at football in the 1920s, if you looked at all the people that were playing, they were all about the same body type, sizes, and everything. And as the sport developed, you had different body types, and that's what makes the sport great, because you have all these different body types for their specific positions. And the same thing with strongman. You're going to have the different weight classes that you're going to kind of see different strengths come out of like what they can and can't do. And I'm not gonna lie, it is sometimes a little bit more impressive to see somebody that can deadlift 700 pounds at under 200 pounds versus the guy that weighs 300 pounds and then can be doing 700 pounds plus. Does that make sense? I think it's more relatable to the audience to see these more attainable bodies. And Joe needs to quit running away when he disagrees with us. But yeah, so for me, I feel like we shouldn't like push away anybody because there is a place that we can find. We just have to do it efficiently in a way that they can help grow the sport. Because I can understand, Darren, like sometimes you feel like it kind of takes away because there's so many people and we're trying to crunch in as much TV time as we can or streaming time, and I can see where that does take away. But there's a balance, there's a sweet spot. Like I was about to tell Joe earlier, I feel like strongman's going through its like puberty. It's like awkward right now. It's growing, but it's a little awkward. And we're trying to find its like professional future right now.
Yeah. So I mean,
yeah, I agree with that 100%.
I'm going to retort back at you, Yony. I think money talks, and the audiences are spending their money on all the big guys, right? And I mean, it's great. Like I don't want to push anybody away. I'm not saying we should push anybody away. Just I think there's some objective truths out there that we, as hard as we try, the lower the weight classes, like I'm not knocking anybody, it's just reality. The lighter the weight classes, the less they're watched. People are interested in the big freak shows. That's where the money goes. That's where the audience is. It's just an unfortunate reality of the sport.
But that's because it's been around the longest. Like that's the bread and butter, right? Like that's the bread and butter of the strongman sport. But as the sport grow, maybe you don't want bread and butter. Maybe you want a croissant. Maybe you want. I'm just saying, like you. I mean,
the future can prove me wrong.
I think it will. I think it will. I think you'll always be right that the big bodies are always going to dominate the sport. But like any business that starts off with like 2 or 3 items, it eventually has to expand to have a better reach across different palettes that people want to see and support.
Yeah. And I think so. And again, my perspective is that strongman, right? The kind of the spirit of that sport is the strongest man. That's where it derived at. And it's not that people don't want to see lighter athletes, because CrossFit again is all much lighter athletes. Is one of the hugest, most watched strength sports on the planet.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a growth in this sport that's going to take a lot longer than those of us who are kind of getting a little bit antsy trying to see sort of this explosion of strongman take place and thinking that should have happened in the last 10 years, Darren, since you made mention of the 231 class sort of and that heavy sort of 105 heavyweight open class that strongman was kind of divided like the Red Sea with there for a long time. I could tell you, just to comment on that real quick, because I came up kind of when you did through the sport as well. At 5'10", I got up to like 325 pounds to try to compete with those fuckers. I'm telling you, man, it was just hard. It was hard. I mean, I wanted to compete so bad with these big guys, but it just got to the point where I don't care who you are. If you're not 6'3", 6'1" at least, you just can't grow into the sport. And so personally, I'm grateful that we've taken off in this other direction, but ultimately, I think you're both right to some degree. I know that the consumership out there is so used to seeing these giants, and that's who they gravitate towards. However, I think that in order for this sport to grow, it's got to be inclusive.
I think we could go in a controversial direction, because I've been thinking about this a lot recently.
More than Darren?
This is more controversial than Darren's. Is instead of weight classes, it's just men
over 6 feet. John?
It's just men over 6 feet and men under 6 feet. No weight classes. It's just pure height.
What's your logic?
No weight class. Hey, that's the way like ultimate fighting was way back in the day.
Yeah. No weight cuts. It's just like pure strength, because there are amazing people out there. Piscari, he's incredible.
Dude, he wants to. He would. Yeah. Dude, Piscari, even Nick. I mean, Nick Cavy's put on some weight now. I mean, he's a beefcake now. But I mean, even at under 105, he could have been very competitive against those guys. But here's my closing thought on this is that I would never want to watch baby monster trucks.
Okay, I can't.
Oh no!
That's the strongest opinion we've ever had. I was like,
Oh, that is a strong
I-
opinion. Oh shit!
I just
love it.
wanted to try to be.
I feel like you went up me, John. Be more controversial than me.
Yeah, because
Oh,
I think
shoot.
I think I think we're onto something though of like trying to have seasons for these things because it's essentially like there's a reason why college athletics they don't put all their sports in the same season. You just be eating into your audience and the people are paying to do it and stuff. And I think there's a variety of things that people can do. I think one thing is maybe taking the scoring a bit more seriously because I think I only understand what's happening in a strongman competition because I understand the scoring system and I like pay attention. But to the average person, like tuning into the Ragnarok games, there's no name tags, no scoring. I simply have to know the athletes based on what they look or if the announcer mentions it. And I have to count the reps as I'm watching it. Which, if you're only showing one athlete at a time, I only know how that one athlete is doing at that time. So I think it's a combination of things, and I think I hear promoters a lot of times talking about they don't have enough athletes signing up, and it's like at least here in Texas, March 25th and 26th, we have 5 different national qualifiers within like 150 miles of each other within 3-hour drive. It's like I think a part of it comes down to, and we recently had uh, one of our fans message us on Instagram about this, but we have an issue where as a state rep, it should be your job to make sure that there's not more than one competition per weekend just to help the athletes and help everyone out
Absolutely.
instead.
Yeah.
And I think it was bizarre to me to realize in Texas, you have like 4 events on the same weekend, and then the weekend before there's nothing happening in Texas. And you're like, why?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think a part of it is, I mean, and we've touched on it in a previous episode, is I think USS and Strongman Corp sometimes, specifically USS, needs to think more from a business aspect of like what will help things grow rather than just letting everyone just do the Wild West.
Throw
It is
content wherever they
Texas.
want.
Don't get me wrong.
There just has to be some standards, right?
Yeah.
There just has to be some standards, and that's one of those standards. But I mean, you're on to something. I mean, as far as like, I'm again going back to, if we want to grow this growth of the sport means something different to everybody. It seems, right. I mean, some people think the growth of the sport means more athletes. I've always been had more of a mindset that real growth is in the audience, right? Because with the audience brings more sponsor opportunities because of greater ROI, right? And that's the way you bring money into the sport. And so going right back to, the sport as a whole, especially in the US, needs to start thinking more about how to make it more attractive to an audience. And big, crazy ass implements, I don't think is it. Because some people, like we saw in Australia, while it looked like a great competition and the competitors loved it, some of that stuff was just an eyesore, man. I was so focused on this big contraption, I wasn't watching the athlete, right? But there's so many things. Score sharing is huge. Having interaction with the audience, right? There's got to be, they have to feel engaged, right? Those athlete interviews. That's the one thing I do like that out of Ragnarok is getting to see an interview with the athlete. Like, that's huge. Like, how do we know who we're watching anything about them? They're just people out on the field doing things, right? If we don't get an opportunity to hear from them. So I think there's a lot of things that promoters can change and be better at to attract the audience, which in turn attracts the sponsors, attracts the money, and that is what's going to help the sport grow at all weight classes.
Definitely.
I'll just say this one last thing because I know we got a lot to talk about here today. I know we'll get off on a tangent like we're not even doing a show. We did it last time on when I hosted. But I will say that you're right, Darren. I totally agree with you. The promoters have to get more creative in creating value and providing information. And this live streaming thing is going to get itself worked out. I guarantee it will. People understand that it's not just going to be about the live stream, but what that live stream is going to produce for them, including the information it's going to produce, not just the competition itself. That's one. Two, of course, are, like you'd mentioned, these athlete interviews and all the stuff that we're kind of participating in as well, that is kind of lending to all that. And of course, now Yony, you going out to Clash, and Tyler reaching out to me and having me come out there to lend a little more media to all this stuff. I mean, it's these creative promoters, these promoters that are understanding that it's going to take more than just putting up a show on Iron Podium. Come and spend $100 to go to it. I'll get a few sponsors on board, and I'm going to try to make this better every year without doing anything more than that. So I will say we're starting to see that a little bit. I think we're going to see more.
I think a part of it, I think there's a very specific reason why Rogue does all their live streams free. Because at the end of the day, most companies and big sponsors, they'd much rather do a large payout if they know they can get thousands and thousands, hopefully millions of views, rather than when you're relying on even $24 is what I spent to watch Ragnarok, or $25 today. Looking at the statistics out there, maybe I'm wrong, but on a lot of these things, just based on knowing how people pay for things in this sport, I don't know if you're going to get anywhere near like 100,000 people paying for that. Whereas, like, realistically, as
you probably got 150.
Yeah,
and I'm not joking with that number.
Yeah,
and that's the main issue. Is the thing that helps people the most is, as a company, are you going to sponsor something that's going to be seen by the athletes and their family and friends who are there, and maybe a few hundred people online? Or are you going to pay for something that's accessible and that's being shared everywhere? Like, paywalls, typically people will point to like MMA and sports that do very well with paywalls also have good relationships with gambling and have a lot of money behind them. And the thing is, until strongman can actually, like, maybe we need to get in with like casinos and like start setting up betting platforms where there's money behind it for something like that. I think a part of it, and it sucks like to say that like there's not going to be money in live streaming, but there will actually be more money, because realistically, a YouTube live stream, I've watched random political debates on there that get 11,000 views. There are plenty of companies that will actually pay a few $1,000s for that kind of exposure.
Absolutely.
Even like a bit more. And
I just want to say one more thing. I don't want to hijack this, but I want to say one more thing, because John, this goes exactly where what you're just talking about just now. I do the USAPL live streaming in the state of Michigan right now for USAPL, all 11 events. And when I started the season off, I thought, I'm just going to sell a membership for my live streams. My first two shows, I was getting like 20, 30 live stream, people that were paying for it. And I thought, what's the value here? So my last two shows, I decided just to go free, give people back their membership money, and I'll just live stream it as a YouTube live. And now I'm getting thousands of views. And if you look at the average time of view there, and I know what you guys are all thinking, well, what is your viewership time? I'm averaging about 30 minutes per viewer right now on that. So they're engaged in the sport. So you're exactly right. I totally agree with that. Unless we can allow some gambling to come into strongman, God forbid. I'm not condoning that. Darren, that's you. You can say something like that. I am not going to.
Dude, I'm too smart to gamble.
Okay, good. I don't want any part of that. But
that's the only time you'll ever hear me say I'm smart.
Okay, I'm done talking about it. But that was something I thought I'd bring up to what you were just saying.
And it is valuable because people will. The thing is, advertise, like, most sponsors are paying because they want eyes on their product and stuff like that. And I think a part of it is, I'm not necessarily saying that like we need to get gambling in it, but making it more accessible. You'll have people who will generally commit. Of like, the thing is, especially YouTube's smart, because depending on what your status is with YouTube, you can wire it to something where you can get donations and stuff. And there are people who pay to have their comments there. And also, I'll stand by my statement I've said before. I would 100% for a live stream pay an extra $15 if I got a push notification when it was Andrew Clayton or whoever I want to see at the competition, if their thing was up. And that would be so easy to like do. And I think a part of it, I think oftentimes there's this idea that like, oh, we need to make money on the live stream. And it's like, no, you need to make money on the show. And hopefully, if you get enough eyes on the show, you actually have sponsors who are willing to pay for that. Because right now, you literally have sponsors sponsoring shows out of the goodness of their hearts,
That's
because
right.
they're not getting any advertising money back from that. And if like we all know how the viewing game goes with like YouTube and all these things, of like the people who are actually contributing and paying in, they're going to pay regardless. Like they're going to support the thing of like, if I'm watching a live show for free or whatever, I'll try to like buy a shirt or try to support in a general way and stuff. So and the thing is, at that point, if you're doing a pay-per-view, you're only getting the people who are willing to pay for stuff anyways, who would already be paying for stuff to support the show in general. So I know we got on a huge tangent there, but I think it's important, because I think it's this bizarre thing to like watch like promoters being like, why aren't people doing our shows? And it's like, they need to be scheduled out better. Maybe say, I'm not saying that we need to be like, I this is my idea. I like the idea of us being the Shark Tank of the strongman community. You have to pitch your competition to the four of us, and we'll decide whether or not it should be a thing.
Oh,
You're
word.
like, nope, that,
Oh,
that
shit.
doesn't sound very good.
I love it. Yes.
And for that reason, I'm out. I'm like, that's the kind of thing we need going on, really. I think,
we certainly all
namely,
have our own perspective. So yeah.
yeah, because I think a part of it is like, I think there's not very much long-term thinking with it. It's a lot of times like, here's how much money we can make right now. And it's that idea of like, oh, well, we can make $1,500 in pay-per-view right now. And it's like, there are plenty of sponsors out there who, if they knew they could get enough views, they would actually give you that $1,500. They would give you $5,000,
Absolutely.
like more.
Absolutely.
Whereas right now, you're just relying on people being like, yeah, I think you're a good guy and you're running a show, so I'll give you money. I'm not actually going to get any value back from this, but I'm doing it because I like you.
Yeah.
And that's not a good way to do business. So that's my
so we're 41 minutes in, and we've talked about one competition.
Ragnarok.
Well, we talked about Ragnarok briefly and then went on a big old tangent about competition quality.
All right, so
and monster
we'll hold
trucks.
ourselves accountable moving forward here. You're right, Yony. I'm sure Yony did all this research too. I know he did.
That's
true.
The
kind of guy he is. I already know he did. So let's
Well, let's move on then and talk about the Arnold Classic Strongman that's coming up. I assume you guys all have the roster or have looked at it. You're aware of who's coming. Any picks, Joe?
I'm excited about Mateus.
Well, yeah, dude. I'm really super excited to see Mateus back. He's been gone too damn long.
Yeah,
18 months, I think, since his last competition. So I'm
Is it
hoping.
only?
Yes, it's been 18 months. 18 months, yeah, since his last competition.
It feels like it's been years since like COVID started. I feel like I hadn't seen him.
I felt like it was like 3 years.
No, from what I was seeing, like he's done other competitions, but then he just kept re-aggravating injuries. So you're right. It could have been the last time he completed one. It's been a couple of years, but 18 months since he was actually at a competition. But I'm excited.
Where was his last competition? Was he competing in Poland or? Because he hasn't done any big shows in a few years, has he?
I want to say it was like a smaller show in Poland.
Okay.
It was something that he was using to ramp up for the bigger competitions. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But yeah, I'm excited to see him because I'm kind of like fingers crossed. I'm kind of hoping that he's like the Martin of this year, where he comes back from a couple of injuries, and then he kind of goes on a run like Martin did a couple of years ago, or last year. Was it last year? A couple of years ago, 2 years ago.
I think he took like off the year or whatever. Because he had a whole string of injuries. He had a car accident. He hurt his hamstring. There was all that stuff.
Yep.
Everything. And
that's
sorry,
what I'm hoping for Mateus.
Joe, if I keep muting you, it's because there's a weird sound whenever the rest of us are talking. So sometimes I've been muting you. I hope you don't feel like we're.
No, that's okay. I'm really. I feel so terrible right now. Anyhow, I couldn't get off of work in time to get in front of a computer. So, you do what you got to do, John. I think Mateus
working
really
Saturdays, man. That's commitment.
I know. Yeah, I'll tell you guys where I work on Saturdays later, and you might not think so. I'm sure you can use your. Your imagination.
Well, it's not midnight, so.
It's
I was about to say
where my head went was too early for that.
It's a lot more fun. Yeah. Yeah, little side hustle. I got to get I get some of this stuff paid for at Clash of the Coast, Yony, but not all of it. I got to get
wait.
there.
Did you have to change out of your pink fur coat before you came on?
Now that's yeah. Well, it figures Darren would use his imagination in that direction.
Well, hey,
So,
I have one place to go, and it's straight in the gutter.
It's the other side of that gutter. Yeah, but it's there. Yeah, exactly.
Let's stick to the agenda. Let's stay on the rails this time. We go off another 40-minute rant. Give us a little bit of. Give us a little rundown.
I think the storyline at the Arnold to me is Mateus. Really, I think it's one of those shows that it's nice to see people back to, or if we could really kind of get an idea of full strength. It's a heavy show. There's a lot going on there. I think I'm more interested, honestly, in the events of this show, which aren't unlike a lot of the shows that we've seen in the past, outside of a couple of them. But I don't put a lot of weight behind the Arnold Pro Men anymore. I just think it's interesting when we find out who's there, and we can speculate maybe who's going to win particular events. And the show itself, I get it's a pretty good prize pool, but ultimately I think the storyline there's Mateus and kind of where he ends up. But the other guys, I mean, how serious are they taking it? Because the world's strongest man is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So I think the guys that are not thinking that they can actually win World's Strongest Man, I think they're going to put a bigger fight during the Arnold. So no disrespect to people, but like Rob Kearney, I feel like he's always done pretty well at the Arnold, right? I think, what was it, last year? He was actually leading it after day one because of the squat and everything. So I always see like the Arnold being so close to the worst. You'll see the competitors that don't think they really have what it takes to podium at the World's Strongest Man. This is their show to kind of like shine. So I know like Liz and Laws did a breakdown of who they thought was going to be in the podium, and they actually had Mitchell Hooper winning it all, which was kind of surprising because Tom Stoltman's there, but we don't know where he is at his prep.
Laws also coaches Mitch. So I feel like you want your athlete to win. Like, you're not going to be like, oh, by the way, I've coached Mitchell Hooper this whole time.
By the way, my athlete's not going to win. Not a good marketing plan.
I think Mitchell Hooper, though, he really has had a stellar time. If he can avoid injury, and he seems to have been pretty good at avoiding injury, I think is the key. And I think a part of it is, I really like that point that you made, Yony, that like it's interesting to watch the Arnold become kind of a backup show for a lot of people. Like, if you're really wanting to like get to World's Strongest Man, you might not even do it, or you might there are certain shows you don't do and stuff. So I think it'll be interesting, and the women's lineup seems pretty good too. But I definitely put my money on I'd like to see Mateus do better, and I think it's probably going to be a good battle between Tom, Mateus, and Mitchell Hooper, probably.
Don't count out Trey. And I mean,
Trey actually, never mind.
Mitchell
it's the timber frame carry for Mitchell that's going to cost him though.
Which Mitch, are you talking about Hooper or Trey?
Trey Mitchell. You said Trey Mitchell, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. So Trey Mitchell historically doesn't do very well with the frame carry, and this is strapless. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty much in relative agreement. I think Mitchell Hooper's had a fantastic year. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how Trey Mitchell does, but yeah. Hooper, Kielskowski, Tom Stoltman, I think, will be on the podium.
Yeah, and
we'll see what order.
Yeah, I like Mitchell Hooper to win this, honestly. He's done nothing but impress me. That rookie season he had was amazing, and he's built for this show. He's a super strong guy. I would say the one variable in this show is that stupid stone throw. I don't even know what that's about, why they're doing it. But I don't want anybody to lose the show because of that event. And why do I see that happening? It's a nightmare that keeps repeating in my head.
I think it's important to throw in events that people can't really prepare for and train for. I like to know which athletes can adapt. I don't want to know just what you've been able to repeat 100,000 times. I want to know that you can also adapt to something different and new. But I don't
disagree with that. I just wish it wasn't a stone put or whatever it is. I guess
is it just a put? I mean, I don't know. Unspunnen stone throw. I don't know what that means.
It's just a stone throw. So like you have like 10 feet of sand in front of you, and then you, like, from the videos that I've seen, you kind of run up with the stone and then you toss it as far as you can.
Okay.
Oh, that's why Inez has been doing it.
Who's the tallest guy at this show?
Tom Stoltman.
Okay, Tom Stoltman's winning that event. I bet you guys he's going to win it. He's the tallest guy. Of course he's going to win it.
Okay, but does he have the speed and power of Mitchell Hooper?
Man, I don't know if that. You know what? I did this in Highland Games once, and maybe this is where I'm a little snake bit by it. Yeah, I was killing this Highland Games competition. And these guys had no business being there with me. I was that guy that day, right? And they had that stupid stone throw, and I'm 5'10", and this jackass was like 6'10". He threw the stone, and it went like 7 feet further than me because he just dropped it from a higher point. Ridiculous. Anyhow, sorry, Yony. You're probably
the
right.
truth comes out.
No, and I think it's a nice like breather event. It's I feel like this is kind of like the competitions that I'm used to seeing at my level, where it's like the sandbag throw. You know what I mean? It's an event. It's not super heavy. It's not going to beat you up, but it's a nice kind of like event to mix it up. One of the things I do enjoy is that the fact that this time they didn't put the wheel of pain before the deadlift like they did last year.
Yeah, that was a weird thing to me to like put, because the wheel of pain is just so incredibly taxing.
Yes.
And everything, and I feel like that impacts things. And I think that's why I really want Mateusz to come back and everything, but I know he struggles pretty intensely with the deadlift.
Yeah,
and stuff. So I think that, whereas like I think Trey Mitchell is surprisingly well rounded if he can get his grip together for the frame carry stuff.
Agreed.
And I think grip is something you can work on much easier than your deadlift, in a way.
And I mean,
you certainly make bigger gains in it. That's a fact. Yeah, I agree.
If we're being fair too, I mean, grip was not always Big Z's strongest point either, right? And I mean, he was so well rounded and so strong in everything else that didn't stop it. But if you go back and look at, I mean, especially even arm over arm, like he couldn't grip the rope half the time, right?
That's so true.
So for this though, for Trey, the reason I think it's so detrimental, it's because the guys that he needs to stay ahead of are also better than him on the deadlift. So then he also loses points on the carry, especially since it's going to be strapless this year, because they kind of found that sweet spot where it's heavy enough where it's impressive and they can run up with it, but it doesn't require straps.
Right.
And Mateusz killed that one a few years ago, or last time he competed, with that 7-second run, which was stupid fast.
That for one, that's an iconic moment before that timber carry, because the interviewer specifically asks Thor, she's like, that was a big like deadlift, like, do you think it will affect your grip at all? And he was like, no, my grip's great. And then he just sits there the whole time while Mateusz runs up the ramp in 7 seconds. And I just like, just the timing of that, of being like, no, my grip's great. Why would the grip be a problem? And he just sits there, picks it up, drops it on one side, drops it on the other side. It took like 21 seconds for the whole thing. And I was like, that's just like, it was just so funny because the way you dismissed her concerns about grip, he was like, why'd that be an issue? And then he just like kept looking at the handle, like the handle might be the problem. So that's a good moment. But once again, that felt like so many years ago that like, I can't even remember.
Yeah, I think Arnold, it had better years back in the heyday for sure. I mean, I don't know what we're going to really see out there, but it's going to be fun. And ultimately it's a big hit for all of us in our community and those beyond it, which is a great lends great press to our sport. I love it for that reason, but I'm more interested in this women's probe, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that's really what I've been thinking a lot about. I think we all kind of maybe have.
So real quick, I see that Nadia Stowers, I know, I remember in our group message, we were asking about that. So Nadia Stowers is injured and will not compete.
Oh, really?
And Stowers will be replaced by Rebecca Roberts.
Huh.
I got a
Okay.
question though. Listen, I don't want to sound like a hater because I met Nadia. She's a very beautiful person, but I don't know why you bow out of the Arnold when you compete at the Ragnarok games. I don't know what her reason is behind that, guys, but
Is it a
I got a
bigger
big
paycheck?
question mark going up right now.
There's
Is it a bigger
decent-
paycheck? I don't know what the women's strongman Arnold pays, but
Okay, man. Okay, all right. I mean, listen, if $10,000 come to the Ragnarok games to do nothing, and not, I don't know, guys. I'm not trying to be controversial here, but I don't know. I'll let Darren do that, but I'm gonna, I just got some thoughts about that. I don't like it. I just don't like it.
no.
I think there's a bigger commitment to the sport.
I'm kind of torn on it in this sport that it's a struggle to make a living to start with. It's a very expensive sport. In some ways, I wouldn't blame her to pick up a paycheck because that's gonna help her further down the road. But yeah, I mean, I get it. Going in being the only person in a weight class, and you don't want to brag about winning your competition, right?
So there are some people who do that, and that always
my
astounds me
girlfriend
to
did that
see.
once, and I was like, I don't know you.
Yeah, I got first place in every event. Wow, that is impressive.
Yeah,
No, it was just me the whole time.
yeah, that's poor form.
Have any of y'all actually talked to Victoria Long? Because
I
I'm
interviewed
amazed
her
at
about a month
how
ago.
dominant she's been, but I've rarely
she's
heard of
amazing.
her.
She's a
Joe,
pretty
you've
smart-
talked to her?
Listen, Victoria, she's very soft spoken, as a lot of you guys know. She's very private. I had a great interview with her about a month ago, and I've always been a huge fan. I think it hasn't been said enough, and I think we missed it a little bit even when we were talking about it on our award show that we did together. I think we should have talked about Victoria a little bit more because I think she had one of the greatest years ever in strong woman. And yeah, I mean, to me, she's the clear favorite going into this show. And I'm not saying specifically on any particular event, but overall, I don't think she's got a weakness. And I think ultimately she'll point everybody to death in the Arnold.
From her competitive history, like on the points, she reminds me a lot about Martine, where she'll win some events, but if she doesn't win, she's still like in the top 3 for that event. So very well-rounded.
That consistency is huge because you have events like, I forget, it was one of the Arnold qualifiers or something that Maxime Boudreau placed first place in every event and then got last place in one event, and that's because he lost him a huge amount of points. Whereas Martins is a smart tactician, a lot like Alexi was. Whereas Alexi will see an event that might affect your CNS too much, and he might. It seems like sometimes he tactically chooses possibly to not give it his all or do the extra rep he'd need to get first, because all you need to do is if you're in second place for every single event, that puts you in a way better point standing than to be first place in every event and then only get 1 point on the last event and stuff. So
unless you're like Andrew Clayton and you don't even have to do the last event.
that dominating
Right,
performance.
exactly. Or that.
That was, but yeah,
honorary mention
that's true.
for Andrew.
Yeah, and also Inez,
I think
I have strong hopes for her as like a friend of the
listen,
show.
I
Inez,
think you can go right down this
For who?
lineup.
Inez
I think you can
Carrasquillo.
go right down
Yes.
this lineup, and yeah, she's fantastic. I think. Let me just say this: I think you can go right down this lineup, honestly, and it's very formidable for the idea that a lot of these women are going to position themselves as point stealers in this, because there's some events that really cater to some of these ladies where others maybe not so much. So you take somebody like Victoria, who can kind of play that points game a little bit. It really falls into her lap in that sense. But you look at like Hannah Lindsay, for instance, she'll win that stone put. You watch. She's a Highland Games chick. She's going to do it. That's what.
Is she taller than everybody else?
Andrea, what's that?
Is she taller than all the rest?
Probably. I don't know. But I will say this, like Andrea and Tamara, right? I mean, who's going to win that? I think Andrea's going to win it, but there's another example of a couple ladies that might be up there in a particular event. I don't think you're going to see Andrew Clayton here, obviously, but you're ultimately going to see a very balanced show. I think that we might see it come down to that iconic last event.
And
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the idea, like Tamara Walcott being there. I think it'll be interesting to see that, like, as a deadlift specialist, how that translates to other things. Because like Cam and I were talking about, like speculating on how John Hack will perform in other events. Because like that static strength is very different than like a whole day of like a lot of moving, twisting, and all that stuff. So I think that's one thing I'm very interested to see. Is like I think this is the year where we get to see power lifters probably dominate every deadlift event that they do, but then probably bungle the overhead press and maybe some of the moving events. So I don't know. Those
I
are my
think this is the
thoughts.
revenge for after they've watched Darren's video. All the power lifters are like, oh, okay, we're going to show them up now.
Yeah.
No, I think tomorrow will do well on the timber frame carry and the elephant bar deadlift. I don't know about the other ones, though, because I haven't seen much of her with the lock press. Go ahead.
What I saw of her pressing, it's atrocious. And unless she's done some like miracle work in the last 4 months, I don't expect to see her even. Honest to God, that log.
It's her first event, so I'm still excited for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm
and I think
for her as
it's
well.
good for the show because I think some people are mad that she's like not a strong woman to be there, but I think we need to like see how everyone does.
Oh, she's a strong woman.
Yeah, or yeah, but like some people are like, oh, you need to be like in this sport. So I think this will be an interesting year to see how overall athleticism compares to like sport specific strength.
That drives me nuts, actually, when people get on that like gatekeeper shit. Strongman was, again, getting back to the spirit of the sport. It was to see who the strongest was from all different sports, right? And there's nothing that's more unique to strongman than having non-strongman people coming in to compete in this sport. And because it's about who's the strongest, right? It's not who's the most experienced in all these events per se, right? So I actually like when powerlifters or Highland Games or CrossFitters or anybody comes in and competes, because it's a really good kind of barometer, if you will, for how well strongman athletes are really doing against other sports. Because I mean, again, another strong opinion, I've brought this up before, is that we've got world records in strongman and relative lifts, like the deadlift is a good example, where powerlifters are doing it with no suit, no straps, in the same relative weight class, much heavier, right? So
Joe will leave again if you say something like that.
Yeah. Joe's like, not this shit again.
He's like, I've heard it before. And I do like this, the light team versus the team of darkness is a nice format.
Yeah, well, I actually turned my light down because I didn't want to be the brightest one in the podcast.
No, every time I see John's screen, it makes me think of the movie poster for Kong versus Godzilla, because they have blue and red. So every time I look over it,
yeah, because the contrast thing, they're like, it's a handy thing. Joe, you're back.
But
Joe,
I'm back. I'm sorry, guys.
You might need to sit on the roof of your vehicle so you can get better signal.
I don't know what's. I can't. I got to go back in there and make sure that everything's taken care of. There's no rowdies in there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you are guarding a strip club.
What? I didn't say that. What are you talking about?
Y'all want to jump to the World's Strongest Man? Because I know there's even like more news now because of Mark Felix also announcing that this is his retirement year.
Oh, what a great year this is going to be! Yeah, I'm so excited about this year more than any other year right now, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many great names on the roster for this year.
Yeah, so one of the big call-outs for me are going to be, I think Tom Stoltman still like the big draw, because obviously he's won it 2 years. He has the potential to be one of 2 athletes ever to win it 3 times in a row. I know he took a long break, and then a lot of people were giving him a hard time for that. I don't think it's going to really bother him too much. But seeing Mateus also be competing there, Brian Shaw, his last hurrah. I'm excited for these events. And then also the improvements from competitors like Mitchell Hooper and Trey Mitchell, who, made the finals last year. And then maybe Luke Stoltman will get something besides 7th place because he's gotten that 3 years in a row now.
Yeah, always a bridesmaid. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting show. One thing I'm not a fan of is I don't like when they use heats to disqualify people because unless you have a really good heat for like those things where you have be just against 5 athletes, and if you have a stacked heat, you have athletes who get disqualified who I think could have made it there. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that.
It's ironic that you bring that up because I was just talking to Tyler Purdue about this today.
Oh yeah.
So he's got a really logical and awesome way that he's setting heats up for Clash. But yeah, I've for a long time. I think it's almost obvious and unfortunate. It seems that WSM. It seems like they do stack their heats in a way to push specific people forward. And I guess it's probably getting harder with the level of competition that's there now. But yeah, it would be nice to know how they're actually structuring it. I'd like to see some transparency on that. As a fan.
Is there?
I don't know. You might be waiting a long time. I don't think there's going to be any transparency over that. I agree with you.
There never will be.
I've made that. Yeah, there's not. I've made the same sort of statements on my shows many times. Unless they do that qualifier 30 guys deep, you know what I mean? Give them all the same events in the same day because your scoring is going to all be calculated together. I don't look at this as a legitimate at all. It's stacked for sure. I still enjoy the show. I think it's a mainstay in our strongman community and has been for 40 years. But if they really want to legitimize this, they're going to have to. Otherwise, it's just a television show. It's not really anything much more than that to me. These guys are the strongest guys. Yeah, they're the strongest guys in the world. Make no mistake. But I don't know. Are we really seeing the top 10 compete? I don't know if we are or not.
Do you think having a ranking, having your top 30 athletes, and based on the top 30 athletes that are ranked, then you kind of go all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're the leads of one heat, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, fill out the next roster, and then that's how you fill it in automatically. So that way there's transparency based on the standings, if there were some kind of official standings like that.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to see. But I think to Joe's point, though, I mean, he's pretty spot on with how the heats, and I mean John too, that they don't always get the best athletes into the finals. I think the cream tends to rise to the top still, but in the first Clash, I took the time to go and score all of the athletes as one group versus heats, and I think there was certainly at least 2 guys that wouldn't have even been close to top 10 had it been scored together that made it into finals, right?
Yep.
And it's kind of it's the way it was structured, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's we want to have the best guys in the finals, not somebody that slips through because they had a heat where, everybody bombed 2 events, right? But none of the other heats did.
And that's also what throws me off is the heats, they're all doing the exact same event. So why not just use a scoring system across the thing? It makes sense to put people in groups rather than
sure.
But because that's what's throwing me off. It's because here's how they'll do it. They'll do this bizarre thing where you'll have a heat of 5 guys you've never heard of. And then they'll have a heat where they're oh, it's Trey Mitchell, Brian Shaw, Tom Stoltman, and then
Bobby
2
Thompson.
Guys who would have been, Bobby Thompson. Yeah. And you're wait, so you have
the
these
group
guys.
Of death.
Yeah, you have these guys because Luke Davies had a great point where he said that that he made the good point that there are a lot of these events that are large pro level shows. Many of half the people wouldn't have even made it to the podium at OSG or an event like that. They just happen to get lucky and go through. And I think that hurts the sport because I get that it's fun to have this heat that we all watch, but I've never understood the heat that I'm like, wait, so you have a universal scoring system for these 30 athletes, but then you bizarrely just break it up in chunks of 5 just based on physical low proximity at the time. And it's just like, it just doesn't make sense to me because like you've said of like having that thing where you have athletes who, if it was scored properly, shouldn't have been anywhere near there and stuff.
Strongman has a habit of doing stuff like this, though. I can't remember if it was. I think it was OSG or maybe it was America's Strongest Man when they took that. I guess I don't know. I didn't see if they've done it this year, but where they had the top 10 and they readjusted the scores with some kind of like factoring. It wasn't just simply 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that was a score you started with in the order that you went to finals in. But I remember looking at it, and the way that they did the scoring made it mathematically impossible for like the 5th through 10th to win. I don't know if it was 5th, but it was like certainly the 9th and 10th guy. I just go back and look at it. But if they would have just let the scores alone, there would have been a possibility, right? It may not have been probable, but there would have been a possibility for somebody that was in 10th place to come in at first. But they changed the scores in such a way that it made it mathematically impossible. And I was just like, I was pulling my hair out. I'm like, what were you guys thinking? Why did you do this? And I actually made some comments online about it. People were like, oh, it's just so they can, showcase that they're top 10. I'm like, but you're there to win. You took their chances to win away from them.
Yeah.
Stop fucking with the scores.
Yeah, I don't know what I missed, but I think Tyler Purdue came up with a really good system. He came up with a really good system for Clash, and maybe you guys should have him on, or one of us should share that. He explained it to me as well, Darren, and I appreciated that the way he had done that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yeah, with the World's Strongest Man, I don't know. I'm just excited to see Sean, Mark Felix. And,
so I'll be interviewing Tyler here in a couple of days. So I'll ask him how he came up with the heats.
Yeah, definitely do. It's good. It's good for transparency, and and I told him too that. I mean, it's good that the athletes know how it goes, because I know I've been to shows before, and you order, that's supposedly randomized. You're like, how did that come about? Especially when you're like, you're the first person to go every event or something stupid like that. Was that fair or was that some bias? And so there's got to be, I think for the athletes in the very least, there's got to be some transparency to know that everybody's on a fair playing field.
Yep, agreed, totally. Hey, listen, I blew this show up for you guys, and I apologize with all my stupid phone shit. But
no, man,
it's all right.
I'm gonna let you guys finish it off, but I'll just give you a little taste of where I'm at here.
Welcome to
teasers.
Teasers.
Woo!
Yes.
Flint, Michigan. How's the water?
Oh, it's shitty. It makes for great ice in somebody's drink, I'm sure. But
just throwing salt in the wounds there, man.
I know. I couldn't help it. But here's one thing before you go. I would say next time, if you hold your camera in the vertical mode, it films well. And if you carry a pair of headphones with a mic with you, it actually cuts out a lot of the outside sound.
Yeah,
so having like a nice pair of headphones, like just to keep on your glove box or something.
I
have a pair of headphones.
You never know what's going to happen. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
You're part of your emergency survival kit, Joe.
Apparently, now that's a part of it. Yeah.
The emergency podcast.
Sure. Thanks for dealing with me today, but I got to run. Yony, I'll see you in less than a month, but I'm sure we'll all chat online this week. Talk to you guys later. All right.
Have a good night, Joe.
Yep. Bye.
All right, not to hate on where he's at, but I looked it up on Yelp and it only has 1 star.
Wait, 1 star or 1 dancer that's a star? There's star dancer.
It's got 3 reviews and it's only 1 star.
So
wait, let me read this real quick. I'm so sorry. I got to read this. If I could put negative stars, I would. This place is the worst thing ever. If you're from out of state, you have a better chance of murdering someone than getting into this bar. I couldn't imagine a worse place to be when trying to show someone Chicago and what it's like.
Joe's hard as a hard bouncer, man. He just doesn't let anybody in.
I hope Joe's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going, Darren. I got sidetracked there.
Well, I was gonna say something that's probably too controversial. I'm just gonna put a cap on it.
Yeah.
No,
No.
so what we went over there was just we want more transparency and consistency when it comes to how the heats are chosen. Like John was talking about, there's no point of having a group of death that's purposely chosen versus kind of like we were maybe thinking that it could work if you had a ranking of like your top 30 world's strongest man and then going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then just filling it out like that, because I think that would be more even. And you don't want to accidentally not give 5 through 10, like Darren was saying, the opportunity to actually qualify, because like we saw Bobby Thompson having to go against Brian Shaw on a stone off, and then even though he did better than some of the athletes in 2 of the other heats.
Yeah, because that just throws me off. Like, I just don't understand what logic when you're using a universal score system, why you do that. Like, it would be a bizarre thing of like if you were testing a bunch of people and you just broke them into groups and you just decide who does best out of that group versus like
The only
overall people.
the only caveat to that, though, I mean, if you break them into groups and then still score them all together, strongman being a points and strategy game, it really puts the first group at a disadvantage, right? They just have to go balls to the wall. Or if there's like, I mean, unless you're able to do all of the events at the same time in like 5 different lanes or something, I mean, then you're just doing a big group, right? But you know what I mean? If one group goes, if one group goes first, they're at a disadvantage because they don't know what everybody else is doing. And then the last group, the 5th group goes, they have a big advantage, which makes it kind of unfair too, right?
But that's every
So
competition.
you're better off if you're going to do a group score that they have to compete together, right?
I'm confused because regardless of the competition that you do, if you're one of the first ones to go, you are at a disadvantage because you don't know what to be. That's why I love the fact I love competitions that reset the order based on how you
absolutely.
did. Yeah, because then if you go to a competition, then for example, like I know for a fact that one of the competitions that I won at was because I was the last one to go every single event because they wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
So I could strategize, save my energy when I knew I could. Versus, I felt bad for like the first person because like you had to just go balls out to have any chance because you don't know what the other people are going to be able to do. So
yeah. I hate that, man. I'm a huge stickler for certain kind of traditional things like that. To me, that's strongman. Reverse scoring shouldn't be in every single show, and it drives me nuts when people skip it, and they skip it for reasons that never make sense to me. Like they're like, it's too hard or it takes too long. I'm like, spreadsheet will do it for you in like a click of a button. Like, how is that hard for you? Like, and then communicating it maybe back to your field staff, but so easy.
It's because there's so many weight classes that you're trying to keep track of, and you don't want to change the order, and it's actually faster just to keep the same order throughout. So another reason to go to less weight classes per competition, so the quality improves.
Now Clash didn't reverse. I don't know if they will this time. In the past they didn't, but it had something more to do with production. I think at least that was the reasoning that we were given. And I can't remember. Anthony explained it once, and I don't recall the exact breakdown, but there was some production issue with the reversing that they had decided to not roll with it. But again, they were doing everything else so damn well, doing competitions in 2.5, 3 hours with small field of single class athletes and putting out a good production. I mean,
I'm looking forward to it being even more efficient because they're taking out the record setters portion of the competition.
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't ask y'all. Who do y'all have? Do y'all have any like a front runner for World's Strongest Man? Like, who do you think is going to be your top 3?
Man, again, I got to put Mitchell Hooper up there. I think he's going to be on the podium. I really do. Tom Stoltman, certainly. Third is tough. Man, I don't know. I mean,
you think Mitch's going to win it, or are you just?
No, I think he's going to be on the podium. I rarely like go out and say exact order. But I mean, Trey Mitchell's got a very good chance to be on the podium. I think a second or a third is very, very much within Mitch's reach.
Yeah, I think that I'd agree with that lineup. Like I think the Mitchells will do well, both Trey and
Yeah.
Hooper. So I'm feeling pretty confident about them. I'll just make a side note that Gavin Bilton looks like Mitchell Hooper but with hair. That's like a side
Yeah.
point I'm gonna make. Look at this lineup. Like it looks like Mitchell Hooper trying to put on a disguise.
That's awesome.
It's a little Easter egg if anyone looks at the lineup. But
Okay, yeah, he kind of does. I just saw it.
yeah, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, the tattoos kind of give it away, but yeah.
Yeah. So I mean Martins, I'm also I like, so I would say the Mitchells, will interchange them, and then Martins. I think Alexi's still been doing pretty great. It's hard to say though. Now I'm like, we're getting out of this territory of top three is really hard to guess.
Dude, it's so hard. I mean, Matthews in good form, definitely a competitor for the podium.
Do y'all think Evan Singleton will finish the competition this time?
I hope he does, man. I really like Evan. I had the good fortune of meeting Evan last year in Hilton Head. He actually gave me a ride from the airport. Super good dude. Great guy. I wish the very best for him. I hope he does well. I hope he, I mean, I know he's been working really hard. He's been through some injuries, some ups and downs. I really hope that he goes and does his best. And I mean, I'd like to see him in the finals. I really do. And nothing against Evan. I'm not sure that he's ready to be a podium finisher, but guys come out of the woodworks and surprise us all the time.
Yeah. I would say sometimes I think if Evan were smarter about certain training things that he does based on some things that I've heard and everything, I think he might do a little bit better than he does at times. Like I think sometimes, but Mateusz is the same way. Mateusz just, I would say, overtrains. Of like at least based on like talking to Darren and stuff, I think there's very rarely ever a reason why you should ever go above 90% of competition weight in training. And I've seen some of these athletes will be like comp weight for this many reps or whatever, and you're like, why? Why right now?
Well, I mean, on one hand, I mean,
know.
if you can, right, it's fine. I mean, if comp weight is, 80,
That's true.
60% of your one rep max, then by all means. But you're right. I mean, there's no point in pushing yourself to a max day in, day out. I mean, it provides certainly diminishing returns and risk of injury. So,
yeah. So I mean, I think he still has high hopes. I think Maxime is someone who, like, I'll admit, like I said, he seemed super promising, but he has some serious Achilles heel things of like that deadlift is pretty detrimental. Like, I don't see you winning an event if you're zeroing any event. Like, you need to be able to be in the top 5 of every event you do to be competitive. And I think that's where Trey Mitchell shines, is he can pretty consistently stay. He's never really below 5th on anything, it seems like. So that, I think, can keep you competitive. I mean, it would be kind of nice to see if like Mark Felix can give us one last big show. And of course, Brian Shaw retiring just in time for Half Thor to rejoin the game is interesting. I was like,
granted, I mean, Thor's much younger than Brian is too. So
I think he's like 3 years younger though.
No.
How old's Brian Shaw?
He's in his 40s now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Time ages, because he was in his 30s just like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But
Shaw's 41.
Oh. Whoa.
Yeah, Thor's only like 30.
He's like my age, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So, okay. So that makes sense. I was being a little bit too hard on him.
34. He's my age. Yeah, he's 34.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
He's just getting into his prime. I mean, I think Thor's most formidable years are ahead of him, honestly.
Yeah. I would say, especially, I think it's actually going to be a huge benefit to him, the fact that he's become a very well-rounded athlete. I think
Oh,
that is
Conditioning's not going to be a problem.
game changer and stuff. And I think that's what I'm going to be really interested in is the half throw we'll see in 2024 and everything. That's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
yeah.
And everything. So I think it's hard looking at this lineup though. It's like it would be hard to nail down a top three. But I'd like to list who I like. I can kind of guess who I think should be the last 10 standing.
Yeah.
But that heat system can completely mess that up because every time there's like 4 people you don't know.
Well, I mean, again, I think Cream rises to the top for the most part. I mean, Tom Stoltman's going to be there. I think Mitch Huber, Trey Mitchell, Bobby Thompson. I think Matthias. That's 5. Luke will make it. Brian will make it. I think Luke will make it.
No,
That's
Alexei
8.
Novikov?
Oh,
Alexei.
Alexei, sorry. Alexei will make it. Who am I missing? Maybe a wild card for 9. I mean, Kevin Ferris.
Kevin Ferris, yeah, he's been doing really well.
I could see him being in the finals again.
Wait,
Constantine has been.
Did
What's
you say
that?
you wanted Evan though to get to the finals?
No, I mean, I said I think Evan can. I mean, but he's got to stay healthy, of course. You know, he's had some trials and tribulations leading up to this, so we'll see if Evan can stay healthy. I think Evan definitely has. Look, there's a lot of guys on this list that can make finals.
Yep. Sweet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's gonna be real interesting if we can have everyone there together and stuff like that.
I mean, they've got 7. No, what do they have? 8 weeks left to Worlds. So I mean, a lot can happen in that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there could still be some change ups. So
wait, so when's World's Strongest Man happening again? What's the date?
April
19th to 23rd.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can like get actual video out before December. That would be great. But that's also what threw me off. It's like I feel like last year or 2 years ago they had like all the big shows were within 6 months of each other, and I'm like, you have a year. Like I wish they'd space them out a bit more because that's also a strange thing that I've noticed.
Well, I mean, World Strongest Man used to be later in the year, but ever since they started doing it in the U.S., it seems like they've moved it up, and I don't know if that's for better weather or whatever
I guess
it is.
Rogue doesn't want it to eat into their invitational, and Rogue is now running it. So
yeah, maybe. I mean, that's a good point.
So because Rogue sets the standard for everything. I feel like as far as like business like practices and stuff, like they're very much like know what's happening. And I think I would say Yony is right that like having a more diverse group does attract more people, but I think we do need to get to the point of having better run live shows and actual audience engagement, because it's crazy to have to explain to people who don't understand how strongman works how things are going, because there's not a little box in the corner telling them how things are going. OSG with those big digital counters, that was brilliant. Even those little flip cards that show the weight, that's great. And then you'll have these like huge shows where if you didn't hear the announcer mention the weight, you don't know what it is. You like have to just kind of guess whatever funky bar they're on. You're like, I guess that funky bar in 7 plates, 8 plates, I don't know what that translates to. So that would be my note. It's like, I just space them out more. If even the pro level people are putting them within a month or 2 of each other, I'm like, that's weird to me. I don't know. That was just my last thoughts. And I'm excited that you got invited to be the MC for Clash. How did that happen exactly?
So last year, for my first time ever, before that, I had just been commentating with ADL Live, and I usually commentated with Gabe Pena, which I'm surprised didn't actually get an invite. So I know he's training and still staying prepared in case he has to jump in as an alternate. But yeah, so I started there. Then somebody asked me to be the MC for the Clash of the under 64 kilos women's division last April. I loved it. And then I ended up being the MC for the South Regionals. And big thank you to Derek Owens on that one because he's the one who asked me for that one. So very appreciative of the opportunity. And then I emceed like the Circus of Strength. I emceed the American Hero Classic. And then Tyler circled back this year and asked me if I would be open to emceeing this competition since we had talked about potentially doing more shows last year.
Nice. So you've got some good experience, and it's leading to big shows, man. That's awesome.
I love it because one of the things that I always appreciate from a competition is when the competition is run very efficiently. And I've realized that when the MC's on top of it, like the show goes quicker, the audience appreciates it, the audience in the live stream appreciates it, and then the athletes appreciate it. Because I tell them straight up, it's like, hey, I want to move this as quickly as possible because the less time you spend getting cold between events, the healthier you're going to be throughout the event. The sooner you can go home and start eating and drinking all the beer that a lot of them like to drink right after. And then it just runs everything just runs smoother and it's a better quality. So that's why I push the pace when I'm the MC, because I want that quality. I want that efficiency. And then you marry that with how Clash taught me how to do it with that first event. Cause we did that first one, we did it in 2.5 hours.
That's nuts, man.
And it was for the 64. And then literally like the ladies were finishing one event and it was like you were warming up for the next event. And I love that because I think it's so much better. Yeah. So
yeah, especially from an audience perspective, man, it's so much better.
Yep.
So much better.
Yep. So me, because of that experience and then just seeing how Tyler helped put that show together, and then with Chris Close over there at Metroflix at the time, like that's what I want to replicate as consistently as possible. So that's why I enjoy being an MC.
Nice, dude. That's exciting, man. I can't wait to watch. Again, I wish I was going to be there, but I will definitely be watching. I've been a huge Clash fan from the get go. I love everything that they've done. Still big props to Anthony Furman for kickstarting it. Huge prop to Tyler for taking it on, and continuing the legacy. They've done amazing things for the sport, and I think if anything is going to really advance the sport, I think it's Clash. I really do. Their format, their passion, everything they're doing is pretty spot on.
Yep. Agreed. So I'm glad to be a part of it. If y'all have any questions y'all want me to ask Tyler, shoot them over. I'm more than happy to ask them. And then if there's any athletes, so I'm going to try to record some of the athletes while I'm there. I think it'd be cool to kind of follow just one specific athlete. So if there's like an athlete, you'd be like, hey, it'd be kind of cool to follow their story for the weekend. Please let me know.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of tossing that idea around about like potentially just following one athlete when I'm not emceeing.
I think that would be cool. From the show perspective, I'd like to hear from all the athletes. I think it's really important to give them all a little bit of a platform if you can during the show, right after the event. As soon as they go, put a microphone in front of them, ask them some really intelligent, structured questions. Give them a chance to answer. Right, of course, focus on the guys that are winning, but give everybody an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah,
I think it's super important. They all deserve to be there. They're the best of the best. They all worked their asses off to be there. They all deserve a little bit of time in front of the camera and on the microphone. That's what I would love to see more of is giving these guys an opportunity to speak and showing them that they're valued. And I think there's no better way to do that than to talk to them and give them that opportunity to be seen. It's huge.
So one of the things that Don did a great job with letting me and Gabe do was in between events, like when they were switching over to either another weight class, we would ask like some of the top 2 performers to come onto the stream and talk to us about what the event felt like, how they were feeling, and after what kind of led up, like a quick 5-minute quip with them. And that had one of the most positive responses from the people that were following on the live stream. Because remember, for a lot of these people, they want to build that connection that carries them from competition to competition.
Yeah.
You got to build that relationship. You got to build up that story, because a lot of our favorite athletes is not just because they can do great things physically. That's what gets your attention. But what keeps you there is the relationship you build with the stories that the streaming
100%.
services help you build. So that, yes, I love that idea. Yep.
100%.
I think that's huge, because you'd be surprised how much more engaged people are if they know the athletes who are competing and they know the scores of what's actually happening.
Yep.
Like, it's always been surprising to me of how many shows you don't see that, or they'll have like the MC will just be like making their own jokes and trying to do audience interaction. It's like, engage the audience by helping the athletes and stuff. Like, that's what excites people. So I love that idea, the fact that you and Gabe were doing that.
Well, that's also why I like all the podcasts that are coming out, because I think this is going to give the athletes that aren't used to being in front of a camera some practice runs. Because
Bob, get Bob in front of the camera, make him do it. I say Bob because I know he's one of those people that's like he's stubborn. He doesn't want to get in front of the camera.
No, so what I was going to say was, like, the example here is Cam. So I interviewed Cam, and then he was so, like, you could tell he was just super nervous. We still had a great interview, but but then I saw him on John's podcast, and I loved that, like, he seemed so much more relaxed. Like, he was like so much more comfortable. And even I joked around with his wife, like I messaged him, it's like, hey, he's not rubbing his arm like he was this time. And he's like, oh yeah, he did so much better this time. But again, we're the ones that are going to give all these athletes that practice to be better at sharing their stories as they progress into this sport.
Yeah. I think one of the first things that when I first did my first SCL show, the producer then said to me, actually, it was a producer, it was Marcel, who I think is actually one of the co-directors of SCL. He told me, he's like, being a great athlete is one thing, but what did he say? I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. Being strong is one thing, but to be a great athlete, you have to be good in front of the camera. He said something to that effect, right? You have to develop both, right? You have to be a showman. You have to be, personable, and show people another side of you and have good character, because just to be an athlete, you have to be both, right? Being strong is one thing, but to be a great athlete, you have to be a showman also. And that's why you see some guys like in World's Strongest Man and SCL, they're maybe not the greatest athletes, but they keep getting invites back or to other shows because they're great showmen.
Mm-hmm. Like Rob Kearney's a great showman.
Yeah.
Like people who have those social media things. Did we lose Yony? Are you there?
The darkness has consumed him too.
I think we lost our last guest.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when we go for an hour and 40 minutes.
It's true. I was like, I'll just check.
They just start falling like flies.
Okay. No, I think we might have actually lost him, unless I'll just message him real quick, just in case, just so we can give proper. Oh, he's back.
All right, my battery is dying though, so we do need to end this a little bit.
No,
we've gone way past the time we normally do. So,
I'm sure you can edit out like the first 45 minutes because we went off on the biggest tangent. So real quick, so yes, being a good athlete is a good start, but to be a good sports entertainer, that's where you really have to be able to build a connection with the audience. That's the reason I'm here, because I was literally yelling Kobe as I was throwing like this big old sandbag on a podium. And I was making the audience laugh. And Don was like, hey, do you want to talk in front of the live stream with the commentator? And then I ended up talking on there for 45 minutes. And that's how I got this opportunity. And then a lot of the reason people remember me from competitions, not because I'm winning, it's because like I'm trying to crack jokes with the judges. I'm trying to just entertain people, because 8 hours of a competition can get a little boring. So yes, absolutely, we have to shine the light on the personalities, that make up the athletes in this sport.
Because it really is a game changer. Like, it was surprising of the first time that Cam and I actually talked and everything. he was like, this is the first interview I haven't been nervous for. And he did so well at it that I was like, I didn't even think that, like, I thought he had been doing podcasts all the time and everything. Like, I was
No,
just
I think
very
that was his
surprised.
first one. I think that was his
Yeah,
first
he
one
was
too.
the first one, and that's what surprised me, that he
Yeah.
hasn't done very many.
Because I gave him, and I was honest with him after. I was like, hey, you got to be comfortable being yourself because you have a great story to tell. You have a great support system. So people don't realize that everybody does have a story to tell. And you just have to be confident in telling it for it to actually come through. You can't be nervous about your story. There's a lot of really good stories out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Just be real. That's kind of my thing. Like, as soon as you start trying to impress other people, then you're putting a facade up, right? You're not being true to yourself. You're not being truthful to anybody. Yeah, so just be yourself. That's kind of my thing. I always kind of feel like I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but
you can be a lot of people's shot at tequila, though. Let's go.
Yeah, buddy.
Do you have any final words for us?
Aztec Gold, the cheapest of cheap tequilas. That's me.
I would say I'm like Zerchers. They're for everyone. If we want to get controversial,
what's the Zercher?
The Zercher, it's just a lift that Darren and I debate about.
I thought you were talking about alcohol, and I was like, I haven't heard that one. And I was like, that sounds like a
secret
vodka.
one.
I mean,
it's special, but yeah, no, I think it's good of getting all these things out there, and I think that Darren, when he said that, I was like, yeah, this is one of the only sports where for some reason we don't care about scoreboards and we don't care about the athletes, which is bizarre because the whole point of sports is scores and the people who do them. And that's the main thing. It's like, while some people don't like the politics of like being good with people and everything, at the end of the day, it's an entertainment business. Like, you're trying to serve the consumer, and what serves the consumer best is having fun people to watch. Of like, Darren is remarkably entertaining and claims that he's not always like, and he's like, no, he's the best at this and stuff. So I'm like, it's good to like watch people really be the best, because I think Darren's super charismatic.
I'm just a genius in the body of a clown.
But in clown world, you can be king.
That's a quote. Do any of you guys know who said that?
No.
Or what movie it's from?
No.
I feel bad now. Now I want to Google it. But
so I don't know if it's. I don't know 100% sure that the person actually said it, but it's in the movie The Doors. Val Kilmer playing Jim Morrison.
Huh. I need to see that one again. I haven't seen it
since
high school.
Dropping old school quotes on you guys.
That's true. You got an age flex on us.
Yeah, I do have an age flex on you.
I looked that up, and all that came up was Insane Clown Posse.
Oh, I got Pennywise. Pennywise was what I got.
Pennywise. Go watch the movie The Doors. It's great. Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer's a great actor in general.
Yeah.
Underrated.
Agreed.
We did do Trash or Treasure, but he's a treasure.
Yes. Oh, big time.
All right, guys. I do need to go, though, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's call it a night.
Yeah.
Final words are good night.
All right. Good night, guys.
Thanks for coming, Yony. Pleasure, man. Have a wonderful evening.
I'll see y'all next month. Bye, everybody.
Right. Support us on Patreon or Anchor, and find us on Instagram or Facebook.